Okay, so this is my initial reaction to the new CWC series Arrow, which is based on the Green Arrow comic books uh, and the character of the Green Arrow. Now, when it comes to the Green Arrow, I'm a little bit hit or miss because he's gone through a lot of different stages over the years. Originally, he was supposed to be basically like a Robin Hood type of character, only in a more modern sense as a kind of vigilante superhero. And when it gets to the vigilante, non-superpowered, non-metahuman, as the comic books call them, superhero, where it's not a robot, a cyborg, a mutant, someone endowed with abilities because they're an alien, or a mutant, um, or given powers by the gods, or some other force, like the Blue Beetle was, for instance, given powers by his costume. When you have a different kind of situation like that, it enters into a different realm from the superhero genre, because it's not strictly a superhero genre. It's a costumed crime fighter story. That being said, I can see, like, I know that they've spent years developing this particular series to try and make it really something worthwhile. In this particular case, it seems like they wanted to go with a hero that was similar to Batman so that they could tell the same kind of story as Batman Begins, but with I don't want to say a less epic approach to it, more of just something you're able to put into an episodic series, more of a serial format, where you can have all these different intrigues and plot twists that you don't necessarily have with as well-known a character as Batman, where everyone knows the Batman origin story basically. But not as many people know Green Arrow. I find Green Arrow to be one of the more interesting characters, since he does use what is essentially lethal force, but he does use it in a non-lethal way, and they emphasize this in the series, that he aims his arrows so as to wound, but not to kill, not to miss all vital organs, but to still debilitate someone because they have a frigging arrow in them. And in that way, it kind of does a good job of just walking that fine line to say, this is not behavior that the kids at home should be doing. They should not be playing with bows and arrows and and shooting them at their friends. But this hero in particular is basically a detective. He is someone who is trying to do right. And they introduced an interesting plot point about partway through the story, which is a list written in a diary that is of various people, where they used Starling City, as they're calling it, as just a way to get rich, and they left the people kind of floating. And this actually goes very much in line with Green Arrow's character, who is political. He is very much a political person who is a liberal. He is a left-leaning liberal person, and in that way, he is very much a class traitor. But that goes right in line with the Robin Hood motif, the idea that you should be helping the poor. They make his family, having gotten wealthy from making steel and then closing the mill that produced it. So then he uses that as his base of operations to make his arrows, train his body, all that kind of thing. Um, it's interesting because Green Arrow is a lot like Batman, um, only with a lot less in terms of theatrics. Green Arrow tries to uh, more get things done, and in this way, he is very much acting more as a vigilante. Um, he has his own agenda that he is not uh, making apparent to anyone, so that nobody can really trace it back to him or anything like that. The costume is, uh, I want to say, a little bit lacking, but it's not. It's only lacking in how little it looks like the comic book Green Arrow. But they do try and go with a costume um, that he could easily put on and take off quickly, where he paints the area over his eyes dark, and then puts on the hood so that it obscures his identity. They chose a decent actor to play Oliver Queen, um, and but they introduced that that his sister's nickname is Speedy, and so that kind of hints that eventually she's going to become his sidekick, Speedy, which I guess would sort of make sense, except that they're giving her a drug problem too. Um, so I'm really not too sure about how that's going. They also introduced at the end of the episode, and this is a big spoiler, that the mom, that Oliver Queen's mom, uh, ordered a a kidnapping of Oliver and his friend to try and find out whether or not Oliver knew anything about about the illegal efforts of the Queen family and the other people who are like elites and untouchables and consider themselves to be very much royalty and nobility within this city. Now, the original name of the city, which I kind of you know, alluded to earlier, in the comic books is not Starling City, but it, as I remember, is Star City. Um, and I think Star City is a cooler name. Uh, I think it's a lot more interesting. Um, Apparently, uh, Star City is supposed to be kind of more in the Pacific Northwest, as I remember, and that explains then um, why the Queen family would have been yachting in the Pacific, why the father and son of the Queen family would have been yachting in the Pacific, and Oliver washed up as the only survivor on the shores of an Asian named island, the name of which means purgatory, and they established the same mythos around Queen's origin story there, that he spent years on the island building up his hunting skills in order to survive, and became really excellent and amazing with a bow and arrow, and so that just became his strongest thing. So then, but of course he doesn't let anyone know this. He doesn't let anyone know what it was like living on the island alone for 5 years. Um, so in all this time uh, he also, you know, kept going over the list in his mind of, you know, these people he was going to get revenge on, and, you know, who he needed to get in touch with when he got back. They set up a love interest at a legal advisory office, you know, sort of an office that does pro bono work um, for the little guy, basically. And I think that's a good plot point. It's better than necessarily making the love interest um, like in Batman Begins, where it was an assistant district attorney kind of deal. I think that that didn't quite um, work in terms of the overall story. It was a little bit too convenient. Um, in this case, it works, I think, better that he comes back from his island, sort of like Bruce Wayne comes back from his self-imposed exile where everybody thinks he's dead. Um, and he, just basically turns up, uh, and he's wanting to do things, but he's not. He's keeping that close to the chest. He is not letting anyone know what he's doing yet, because this is like the first week he's back, and he's putting up the good appearance that he's trying to get reacquainted with things, catch up on things, catch up with friends, and get back to his party lifestyle that he was. So in this way, it's kind of echoing the Green Hornet movie that came out a year or two ago. I didn't think that the Green Hornet was that great as a film, because it kept trying to tread that line between action and comedy, because they had a comedic actor playing the lead, and it just doesn't work like that. It doesn't work well. So that being said, I was a lot more pleased with the way that they kind of spun it. They tried to put in some of the soap opera dynamic to try and keep the different audiences intrigued. I am far more interested in how he goes about sort of righting the wrongs. The fact that they have this list of different elites that need to be brought down to justice is great. Unfortunately, they kind of left him where he was, and they introduced this element that the pro bono attorney is the sister of the woman he was on the yacht with, having sex with when the ship went down, and it was kind of cheating on the one girl, so she doesn't like him anymore. She was having a relationship with his best friend named Merlin. You're going to be getting a lot of bad jokes with names like that. Laurel Lance is the name of the pro bono attorney, and then the two girls' father, the father of Laurel Lance and her sister Sarah, the father is a police detective. So, and apparently he's the only police detective in the city, or maybe he's just the chief police detective. But still, it's a big city supposedly, so there should be more than just this one guy. I don't know. It just doesn't quite make sense to me. It doesn't quite ring true. It's too coincidental. Admittedly, if it's supposedly attacks by the same guy or actions by the same guy with the green hood, okay, they might bring him in on it, but there would be other detectives. So there will be critics who are saying that, oh, the elites are the bad guys in this show, but guess what? In the Green Arrow, that's the way that particular world works. There are criminals, but the Green Arrow doesn't go after them. He goes after corporate crooks. He is very much like Daredevil in a lot of ways. And one of the interesting things I thought that they brought to the show was free running. They actually have him running around the island along all these rock surfaces and through trees and bushes and everything. And they show that he, learned how to do this in that way. And so then when they have the actor running along all these rooftops, bouncing between, sort of like Jackie Chan did in a lot of his action movies. Hey, okay, that's great. That's a great element to Green Arrow. That's exactly what you need, because unlike Batman, Green Arrow does not have a gliding cape. He doesn't have, uh, a bat wing or a fancy car or something. I think at best, Green Arrow has a motorcycle. He tries to keep it very much on the low, uh, because if you had like a whole bunch of expensive vehicles and gadgets, it'd be pretty easy to guess who it was the masked vigilante running around your city. It would have to be one of the really, really wealthy people, someone who was in good shape enough to fight crime, and who had an MO uh, where they wanted to fight crime. And one of the things is Batman has been criticized as fighting small time crooks uh, for for things, but really those people can just be impoverished, and it has been a fine line that Batman has walked in the past. It was, in fact, what set up Dick Grayson's departure from working with Batman and moving to Bloodhaven across the river, and starting up his career as Nightwing, uh, wherein I think it was Jason Todd or Tim Drake came on the scene as Robin eventually. So Jason Todd eventually died, and then but he wasn't really dead. He was only mostly dead. But he was killed by the Joker in The Killing Joke. And then Tim Drake came on the scene as the new Robin, and eventually he became, I think it was Red Robin, and Jason Todd became Red Hood, which was Joker's alter ego, and has been set up several times as all these different versions of the Joker. One was in another dimension, another was like a split personality thing, another was a joke that the Joker was playing or something like that. And still, in Batman Arkham City, he claims that they put this red bucket basically on his head, so that he could break into this Ace Chemical plant without being recognized, and they were basically blackmailing him. But as with the Joker, you don't really know what origin story is what. So Tim Drake became Red Robin after Damian Wayne, who was Bruce Wayne and Talia al Ghul's love child, came on the scene, was introduced, and he became the new Robin. Dick Grayson became Batman after Bruce Wayne disappeared, and so there was this weird dynamic. And Jason Todd, just was evil. So it was kind of weird and creepy and scary, because Jason Todd was really bad news. I do not read the comic books. Bear this in mind. I do not buy comic books. I read the synopses of these storylines, because I don't really want to have to read through all these comics over and over again just in order to get the basic gist of the story. But I like the stories. So that being said, comparing that to Green Arrow, where they have a speedy character set up, and they have the fact that she's on drugs, that she has a drug problem set up, the fact that the mother rather remarried, and so there's a question of usurping, like something out of Hamlet. But the thing is, the new husband is not that bad a guy, from what you can tell. He's just someone who kind of stepped in. He's caring, he's loving, he's honorable. He's played by a great actor, I have to say. He's really just so I'm glad that they brought him on board, because it lends just a little bit more credibility to a cast of actors that you don't really recognize straight away, and that's kind of a problem for the CW. Is they choose these actors that are kind of out of nowhere, but they have like some experience. They usually try and appeal their storylines uh, to the 20 somethings, and I will say that this Green Arrow storyline that they've started up is really good, um, and I hope that it doesn't become a big shaggy dog story where a bunch of little intrigues like on Lost are introduced and lead nowhere, um, because I hate that, and I know I'm not the only one who does. So I want the list to lead somewhere. I want, every few episodes a name to be just crossed off the list, where, you know, something from a previous episode pays off in this story arc where he's crossing names off the list, and uh, he is a force for justice against the corporate crooks who get around the uh, the taxes that otherwise crush the average person. This is the kind of story that needs telling. You know, something where there is uh, a wealthy person who is out there looking out for things. It's not just Batman being, a force against crime or whatever, and having this rises and falls and everything. Um, it just becomes this big question of, okay, yeah, epic storyline where suddenly he's able to go from this pit in the middle of nowhere to Gotham City in a very short amount of time. I haven't seen The Dark Knight Rises yet, but apparently that's a big plot loophole that they've not really addressed, so I can't say for certain. But sort of sticking on the Green Arrow thing, I like DC Comics characters for this reason. Um, the Marvel characters are always like these angst-ridden teenagers, basically, and they're able to apply their stories to the plight of homosexuals and transgendered persons. They're able to apply um, the it to just basically being a teenager and discovering you have all this strength and energy and everything, and and it just it gets to be a little bit tiresome because so many of the characters are either down that route, and so the stories always start them out as very young, um, like teenagers, like Rogue in the first X-Men movie, or X-Men First Class. What the heck was that about? Do we have to honestly know everything about them from their childhood on to adulthood? In this case, we don't need to know everything about Oliver Queen. We don't need to know everything um, about Bruce Wayne. We know the origin story, but they still had to stick it in there, and I like that they stuck it in there in an almost non sequitur way. The first half of Batman Begins is very non sequitur, and they kind of go with that same storytelling device where you're in the middle of things and you're alluding back to it for the first half of the pilot episode. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good in that way. They alluded back to what happened on this island. Um, they introduced some plot elements where the mother doesn't trust the son, uh, where the sister has problems because he was gone for 5 years. She ended up turning to drugs as a way to cope with her grief. There's no telling exactly how long she's been on it, but it's clearly to a point where she feels comfortable taking these, and she's no longer naive or aloof about them. She just takes them. And the brother Oliver is trying to keep her away from that. She gets a little bottle of some mysterious drug at a party, and he palms it basically from her purse and disposes of it, throws it in the trash, and you know, gets her to want to leave for herself from the party, um, his welcome back party. So I mean, it has a different sense of things. Um, it's a much more involved storyline where this person is not alone. He is not able to get out of the sight of other people. He has a bodyguard who is watching him, and he ends up having to actually take out his own bodyguard, who's ex-military, to show just how good this guy is. And at one point, um, where he is attacking this one bad guy, this one corporate elite who can't be touched, he gets knocked out and um, ends up almost caught by the police, but he set up a quick escape route because he had a whole plan all along the way of uh, of how to get out of the building quickly, uh, without uh, without allowing for capture. Um, I won't spoil that for you because it's a really cool part to the story. By the way, I keep itching my nose because I have allergies right now that are affecting me, and yeah, so that's why. Anyway, so aside from that, uh, it is an exciting show. They certainly try and put in a lot of action as well as a lot of plot and storyline. I hope that they don't get too bogged down by the soap opera details and the intrigues and stick more with um, the sort of um, the sort of quest and that element, the quest to try and right the wrongs that are that have taken place in Starling City. Um, of course, if it were me, I would have already opened up the steel plant again, but that's me. Uh, his family's doing well, the company's doing well. This Queen Consolidated company, why not open up a steel mill again? That would solve a lot of problems, you know, or reopen it as, I don't know, some other kind of factory, that's making some other kind of product. Anyway, all of that being said, it's it's well executed as storylines go. It's well executed as a television version of a DC comic book character goes because it is very hard to do justice to a DC comic book character. They did a decent job in the '90s with the Flash, and they ended up telling uh, the stories in a really good way with good actors in the different roles, and kind of uh, kind of just doing an okay job with Central City and kind of having it hover in that space between uh, 1940s or 50s America and the today of that time, where it was kind of retro and yet it was also kind of modern. They didn't try and explain it too much with too much science, but they also had a lot of the comic book science in it so that it made sense. Uh, all in all, I think it was just uh, a good solid attempt, and that's not easy to do. They were going to make a Wonder Woman show for NBC, but it got canceled sometime before the pilot was finished, I think. And there was an attempt to make an Aquaman series where he was a teenager, but I saw the pilot and it was awful, where he washes ashore as some mysterious boy, and that's just not who Aquaman is. He is the Prince of Atlantis. He knows who he is, um, and eventually he is King of Atlantis, actually, um, after he marries, and you know you would have to be able to tell the story of what's going on under the sea. It cannot be a story that's taking place on dry land, basically. Um, they had, of course, Smallville, which was kind of the groundbreaker. It proved that they were able to do a successful weekly series that that would appeal to a broad-based audience, wherein it would tell this origin story of Superman over the years, from the time he's a teenager to the time he goes to college and finally moves to Metropolis, and even a little while after. Um, you know, bringing in characters like Booster Gold, who is um, a character that they didn't bring on until much, much later in the DC universe from the Superman origin story. So all of that being said, it's interesting that now that we no longer have Smallville, that having been ended, a good year or two ago now, they now have moved on to a superhero who I think is more realistic and I think is more compelling. I think that this series may or may not last. It, as I've said before, it walks a fine line. It has plenty of action, plenty of story. The question is, will it appeal? And they did a good thing. They put it on before Supernatural, which is one of their most popular shows. And it's not a bad show either. I'm not a fan of it, but I have seen a good number of episodes, and it does hold up as a series. It has supernatural elements. It doesn't exactly involve the alien stuff. A friend of mine said it's what the X-Files should have been. So I'm just going to say they did right in terms of the scheduling. They're doing the character a good amount of justice, and they're not trying to just make him a teenager who discovers these abilities like they did with Spider-Man, putting him in high school, and for some reason the high school goes to this super secret scientific lab where they're exposing spiders to gamma radiation. That never quite made sense. Even with the Hulk, they put him as an accomplished scientist, a doctor, where he would have been in his mid-20s. Making the character a teenager is just moronic in terms of telling the story. You can't do that, and certainly not with the DC characters, and do them justice. The DC characters are mature adults. They know their powers by the time that they are fully realized in their role as a hero, as a vigilante, or as a masked avenger or masked crime fighter, whatever you want to call it. I think the best story about someone about any superheroes kind of realizing their superpowers also involved adults, and that was the Mystery Men. This bizarre little movie that was based on the Flaming Carrot comic books, with just a bunch of miscellaneous random superheroes who individually aren't very much, but banded together are very effective. I thought that was one of the best films about superheroes made, because none of them have really that many powers. The bowler has the bowling ball that's possessed by the soul of her dead father. Invisible Boy actually can turn invisible, and just disappears. Clothes fall right off. He essentially ceases to exist. And the Sphinx actually can cut guns in half with his mind. These are really amazing abilities. But only the Invisible Boy has any kind of unnatural powers in and of himself. All of the others basically have talents and abilities that they have developed. The Sphinx, it's basically ESP, telekinesis, but still, that's that you could qualify as a superpower. But Captain Amazing in the story is like the big superhero, and he doesn't really have any superpowers. He has a jetpack, and he just fights crime. That's it. Um, so he just flies in, beats up the bad guys, and saves the day. So, I mean, just basing that as a comparison to DC characters, it's a fair analogy because a lot of the DC heroes don't have superpowers. You look at Marvel, every single character and their mom has a superpower. It's always something that's kind of passed on, or it's, like you have Hulk and She-Hulk, who is his daughter. You have this happening a lot where the mutant gene is passed on in the X-Men series, and it just continues from there. It's this ongoing thing where every person who has a power, they're related to someone. Nightcrawler is is the son of Mystique, and so is Rogue. Is the daughter of Mystique. So I mean, everyone is just related to everyone, whereas in the DC universe, if you watch Young Justice or Green Lantern, powers come from all directions, and it's a matter of the choices that we make. There is a moral ambivalence that is the choice that you make as a person every day with every single option you have. So it's not about you have this power, what are you going to do with it? It's what choices are you going to make? Are you going to develop talents and abilities? Are you going to, or if you are given powers, what are you going to do with them? Are you going to become, a tyrant and a bully and a monster, or are you going to become something greater, something that is beneficial to the rest of society? And that is kind of Green Arrow's big choice. That is Green Arrow's ultimate choice, is a certain amount of self-accountability that goes beyond simply who he is, but more what he believes in. And that is the biggest question of all, is when will his quest be over? He has a list. Will his quest be over after that? That's really my question. What will be the last person on that list? And will that person be his toughest opponent? How hard will it get from week to week for him to take on these bad guys? Will he be able to sometimes take down two of these corporate criminals, these money launderers and people who feed and thrive in life based on other people's suffering? Will the Green Arrow be able to do that? And what choices will he have to make along the way? And will people in his inner circle eventually catch on that he is this masked crime fighter? I think that it's the best element to the story. I think that it's one of the better superhero stories that they could tell without having to have him have any superpowers. I think it does a great job with the whole Batman style of superhero storytelling, without relying just on the name recognition of Batman, without it having all the theatricality of Batman, or nearly as many of the what would you call it, the rogues gallery, the bad guys. Everyone always says, oh well, Batman has the best bad guys. I want to see the kind of bad guys that Green Arrow goes up against. I'm actually compelled by this series. I want to see where it goes, because it's a different kind of thing. It's not just natural disasters like with Superman, and it's not trying to stop organized crime. In this case, it is trying to stop the elites of society from taking advantage of their power to exploit others and make their lives harder. It shows homelessness, not on this under level like when they were filming in Chicago for Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, where you have all these homeless people living in this under level on these lower streets. you have this other side um, to society that people just drive right past in their world, and there can be good people there. And I just find it so compelling that they are not afraid to show uh, that this is a character who is doing this out of liberal sensibilities in many ways, and is trying to set right uh, something that his his father and his family and all of the people around him did wrong. Robin Hood is the perfect symbol for that, and that's why it's so appropriate that he dresses up as Robin Hood essentially for his crime fighting. It is such a good element to the story that just makes you want to learn more and to see how he goes about on his quest. So that's where I'm going to end it for now, because I've covered almost every topic I can think of, and I'm a little bit tapped now. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please remember to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Bye.